Nasir Hussain wrote in his column today that did India not actually value their world number one status? Do you agree with that comment?
No, actually, what happened in the first Test match. We got exposed with our general approach to international cricket and Test match cricket. This is how we have generally played in the last 2-3 years, and in spite of that, we have still sort of won Test matches. We've still managed to become the number one Test team. Even to South Africa, it was Gary Kirsten who wanted the players a little earlier who were not involved with other cricket. It took a few guys who were not involved with one-day cricket, to South Africa to get themselves acclimatized. Tour of New Zealand also, there was no official warm-up game. India went straight into a T20 match followed by one day. They played superbly there. So this has become the standard approach of the Indian team when it comes to overseas tours. This time round, because somehow that Lord's Test match got so much attention for various reasons, there was, I think, a lot of expectation, and suddenly the spotlight was so much on this team that their standard approach didn't quite go well, where people started feeling that they should have given this series a lot more importance. And yes, I think there is a valid point there that is made. Ideally, if Zair Khan, for example, hadn't gone to West Indies, the worry should have been that he is coming into a Test match cold. One side game, a few overs here and there is not enough. And the worst thing that people, when they suggest that he should ease up into the series, or it will take a while for Zair Khan to get warmed up in the series, I don't think that's the right way to look at all. I mean, first Test match of a major series, the player has to be ready, fighting fit, ready to go. It's like Roger Federer, when the Wimbledon comes, or the main tournament comes, they are fit and ready to go, because every match for them is important. So the first Test match especially is critical. So I think what has really come out from what happened to Zair Khan is how we are managing players, the senior players, the fitness of the players, so that they are ready and raring to go in that first Test match. And we shouldn't be having any player who will somehow ease himself into the series and use actually an international official Test match to get warmed up completely. I don't think that's the right way to get into a major series. From that standpoint, I think Nasir Hussain is right, and maybe that is the lesson learned from this Test match.
So in one way, you're saying that India were unprepared going into this Test match, but also you're raising the issue about Zahir's fitness. At a distance, did you think Zahir was actually fit going into the series?
What has happened with India is, as I said, that approach of approaching an overseas series the way they have done in the last 1 or 2 years has never shown India up. They've managed to win matches. They have managed to retain or climb to the number one ranking with that approach. But as I said, the significance of this series has somehow got people to look at this little. Perhaps it's not an ideal situation. I mean, England wouldn't approach a situation like this the way India has done. And I thought, what is happening currently with fitness of major players? It's left to the individual, the way he wants to tackle his own fitness. I don't think Indian cricket or the physio has a plan for the senior or the overworked Indian players, to get them ready and fit for the main game. I don't think there is a sophisticated or a well-planned approach to it. I think it's all left to the senior cricketer, the way he wants to approach it. Zair Khan perhaps made a mistake, because it was the worst Indian nightmare that came true in the very first day of the Test series. Just terrible. So it's something that went wrong, and it's time that you start looking at it a little more seriously, and maybe not leave it to the individual to assess his fitness and approach matches the way they do at the moment. I think they just sort of follow the senior players the way he wants to actually go and play an international match. And with senior batsmen, it's worked, but I think with bowlers it gets a little more complicated.
Yeah. Perhaps in the absence of Zahir, India fell short of that third seam bowler, which Dhoni pointed out. But what about the batsmen? Were you disappointed with the senior batsmen, especially in the second innings, the way kind of on a fifth-day pitch, which really didn't look so bad or harmful to, or how do you say, dangerous for the batsmen? Do you really think Indian senior batsmen disappointed?
Yes, by their own standards, it was slightly disappointing, but it is something that you expect from Indian batsmen. It takes them a while. We have a history of starting slow. Whatever the pitch, we start a little slow, so that has to be accounted for. Um, so I think the only thing that I will be critical about is the way Zair Khan, sort of let India down. Some people might say that injury can happen to anyone at any time, but it wasn't a case of a freak injury. I think there is some logic to it why that happened to Zair Khan. So yes, Indian batting takes a while to get themselves going. We saw in South Africa as well. The first innings they were terrible, and then they improved slightly. India lost the game when England batted first. After India won the toss, put them in, and they got 478. I think that's where India lost the game, and were always fighting against the tide after that. Their batting was always going to be under pressure once England got 478 on a pitch that had, I think, plenty for the bowlers on day 1, 2, and 3 at least.
What's your assessment of England? There's a lot of talk about England here, especially the media pundits claim that England deserve to be the number one team and they are playing like one. Would you agree?
See, these are still early days. People are talking already about whether India is worthy number one or England is a strong contender for that. These are early days. We are talking about 4 test matches, and I think by the end of it we'll get a fairly good idea, which is the superior team. But I tweeted about it as well, is that the England team that beat India doesn't look unbeatable, because they showed some of their weaknesses as well. I was staggered by the number of catches that they draw. We've seen Australia, we've seen West Indies, who reigned, world cricket, and their catching was absolutely brilliant. I mean, West Indies was even better than Australia when they were at top. If you edged something behind, you just started walking. You didn't bother to look back. So yes, the catching needs to improve a lot. They lost 5 wickets very quickly in the second innings, so India can do that again and trouble them. They have a slight weakness against spinners. So if the pitch is dry somewhere, maybe Trent Bridge might provide that opportunity. Of course, Harbhajan has to bowl a lot better for England to come under pressure. But it didn't look like a team that's invincible. And I don't think India would be thinking, okay, how do we beat this team? It looks ominous. I don't think that is what came across from that England win.
Going forward, I mean, what are the positives India gained out of this test? And the batting of Abhinav Mukund, I mean, he didn't seem that kind of nervous or anything. And even Suresh Raina in the end. Do you think these are the 2 big positives going forward? And who would you play in if Zaheer doesn't manage to make it back for the Trent Bridge test?
The positives firstly for me is something that I've admired in this Dhoni-led Indian team is the fight that these guys put up. From losing positions, they keep coming back. In fact, that has become their way of playing the game. You don't see that Indian team under Dhoni just sagging shoulders, they don't give up that easily as the teams earlier used to. So once they lost Zaheer Khan, it was a tremendous setback. We've been talking about this number one position that India has, and a lot of it depends on Zaheer Khan being fit and at the top of his game. Until Harbhajan becomes that wicket-taking bowler of the past and the force that he was, till then, Zaheer Khan is the man for India to keep them at that number one position. And India lost him on day 1. In spite of that, the match went right down to the last session and India was still fighting to save it. Shows the kind of fight that this team has. Abhinav Mukund shows a good attitude, and it seemed like he's keen to go out there and play for India, play the new ball, play test match cricket, which is excellent. I think that's a great sign. Suresh Raina, in spite of his weakness that people keep talking about, he keeps getting runs at the international level, and I thought his inning of 70 odd was very good. So those were the positives. Gambhir has to come good. It's a shame that he had that injury in that second innings, but these are guys that will come good. Dravid is looking like he'll carry this form right through the series. The West Indies 100 didn't sort of tell me that Dravid has arrived. But this 100 in the first inning has shown that there's a possibility that another Indian batting maestro might get second win, which is great for Indian cricket. Lakshman has been consistent. So yes, lots of positives. But now I think time has come for Bhaji to rise to the occasion. Time is running out for him because the expectations from him is a lot more because of the problem that we are having with Zaheer Khan.
Harbhajan, where do you put the finger exactly? What's going wrong?
It's something that I said at that in time out as well that we did before the India-England series is Harbhajan has become this bowler who's going to bowl in a certain fashion. There's not going to be anything different that he'll dish out. He doesn't bowl the dusra as much. You don't see different ways of trying to get the batsman out. So that is what Harbhajan has become, and people have got a fair idea about what he bowls. And because there was Graham Swan at the other end, the comparisons were bound to come in, and there were a few things that were seen which Bhaji is falling short of. One is the vicious spin that sometimes Swan would get, which Bhaji doesn't seem to have got. And one of the things that I learned as a player playing in England on two tours is that I found the Indian spinners who bowled superbly in India, people like Hirwani, he was there in 1990, 96 as well. I found that they were just not getting the kind of fizz off the pitch that they used to get in India. And I started seeing the reason for it. I think to get real nip and spin and bounce of English pitches, you need to be a strong kind of a bowler. You've got to have strong wrist action, fingers have got to be strong, there's got to be a lot of body behind your bowling. In India, sometimes all you have to do is just release the ball and give it a little bit of a tweak, and the pitch does the rest for you. But in England, I don't think there's a ready-made spin and bounce for spinners to just get. They have to extract it, and whether that is one of the problem that Harbhajan has, I wonder whether physically he's not as fit as he has to be, because the whole body's got to come in. The wrist and the fingers, there's got to be strength in that to get the ball to fizz off the pitch. And that's where again I think Amit Mishra, if he doesn't get a rank turn or a helpful pitch, might have the same problem that Bhaji has. Shane Warne has a terrific record in England because he was always a guy who put a lot of body behind balls, so there was always strength in his delivery. You know what I'm trying to say, the strength behind the spin, behind every ball. So I wonder whether that is something that's just letting Bhaji down.
Finally, the other talking point going into the series was the DRS. But overall, at the end of this match, it seems that the umpires got everything correct, except for a couple of decisions which, to the naked eye, looked completely out, and the umpires it became controversy. It didn't become a controversy, but it did seem kind of a little bit. What do you say? Dodgy. Yeah. Would you agree?
See, what's happened now is because there's DRS on offer. Players have had experience of DRS. They know there is a tool out there that you can use, but which is not being used. So what I saw is, a lot of the time the players felt that there was some unfinished business on the field. When Gautam Gambhir was given out leg before, it eventually looked like a pretty good decision, but he would have been the first one to go for the DRS, because when he was walking off, had there been no DRS, he would have walked off in shame and disappointed, and would have felt that maybe I did get a tough one. But they go with the feeling that DRS would have given me a second lifeline. So I think that is happening a lot, even with the bowlers. Very often there was a leg before shout. I forget again which batsman. I think it was Tendulkar, which looked very plumb, wasn't given by Billy, and the bowler, couldn't do anything about it. Had there been a DRS, he would have had that review. So there's a lot of unfinished business, which creates a bit of frustration in the player. I think there was, towards the end of that match, there was some frustration that bowlers had against Billy Bowden for a couple of decisions that he made. DRS, just keeps things calm, and there's no unfinished business left. But having said that, I thought the umpires did a terrific job. And Asad Rauf, we talk about Anderson, Kevin Peterson, Dravid, Stuart Broad being the stars. I think you've got to start now keeping the umpires also on the same pedestal. Because, with the kind of scrutiny that there is, and because DRS is not being used, the umpires are even more under the spotlight. I thought Asad Rauf was just brilliant as an umpire. Billy Bowden didn't have a bad game, but he still looks to me a little vulnerable, to making some horrendous decisions. That's the trait that Billy has. But Asad Rauf, I think, rose by a few notches in this test match of great focus. There was big pressure on the umpires too. It was a big stage test match where the world was watching that match. And Asad Rauf was a star for me.